Yo, 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 what's going on, everyone, and welcome to another installment of Tying with Tone. Today I wanted to go over a pattern that's become near and dear to my heart. It's kind of just a combination of two of my favorite styles, just a basic brush fly with a couple of different layers to the brushwork itself, and a flat wing. So the tail end of it being the flat wing section of it, modeled pretty well after a traditional flat wing, I guess. So you have your prop material, your flat wing saddles, a little bit of flash making up the entirety of the tail section, and then two layers of different types of brushworks, one for the body and one for the head. Piece of cake, super simple. And the name of the game with this brush fly is really preparation. As long as you have your brush making materials and everything set the way you like it, all you have to do is focus on the densities and the lengths of your brushwork to make sure this fly is just a breeze. Again, it's one of those things where you can make it look a whole lot easier based on the preparation before your construction. So again, this is going to be an electric lettuce pattern with the chartreuse and blue mixed in with the headwork, white on the body material, and chartreuse and white flat wing saddles mixed in there. Really makes for a nice little profile with a little post trim action to it. Perfect swim, perfect flow. Really love the fly. So I love tying flat wings. I love tying brush flies. Just makes perfect sense to incorporate the two different styles into one ultimate flat wing brush fly. So let's just get into her. You can make this as simple or as decorated as you would like. Eyes, no eyes, more flash, more style, different colors, different materials. It's a platform like anything else. And that's what I love about doing this, where you take the idea of a platform and you basically make it your own. But you know, for the sake of tradition, we're going to start with the prop material. I just do a small clump of fairly long, not super long bucktail. Really keeps those saddles in check when you're holding it up off of... Ooh, that was an uneven cut. That was really weird. Sorry, my finger slipped at the last moment. It really caught me off guard there. So I'll just trim those butt ends. Get yourself a nice little clump of bucktail. I mean, nothing too crazy, just enough to give yourself a little bit of stiffness to the bottom side of that tail section. And if you really wanted to get crazy with it, I don't know, I'd say 20, 25 pieces if you're really willing to sit there and wanting to estimate or count those things out. So you lay down your base. Have that still pointing nice and straight. You don't want to put too much tension, where it's all about the thread control here with bucktail around the shank of the hook. The more tension, the more flare, generally depending on what section of the tail you take your bucktail from. But I like to keep it nice and loose, yet solid, and then start cinching down with a little bit more tension, really lock that in place as you're moving back. Step one complete. Now, these things, I've already selected my saddles, separated everything so they're all organized, stacked to length, the way I want it to be. I do one slightly wider chartreuse flat wing feather, and then three, let me just throw that on the floor real quick, thinner white flat wing feathers on top of that. So the chartreuse has a little bit of a twist to it from the saddle that I have, which can use to its advantage. It'll give you a little bit more action in the water. But I basically want to take that back. The back of my vise with this hook right here will put me at about 6.5 inches. So I'm going to hover around there. And like I said, they're already pre-pulled, pre-stacked. So all I have to do is line them up nice and slim there in between my fingers. Watch that slip out in front of everyone. And then pinch her down in place. Get a couple of loose wraps to make sure that I'm in the correct position. Make sure that that's sitting the way I want it to, and it's gonna lay nice and even across the top. And I like that. So holding it in place, I'll just keep it not too tight, not too loose. Set that thing down where she needs to go. Nip them tips, bring her back, lock her down, clean her up. Piece of cake. There's the base of your tail section. Like to throw a little bit of flash. With this stuff, I like to do some crystal flash. 6 pieces is my go-to, 6 strands of crystal flash. I like to give myself standards as far as the numbers and volumes of certain things. It really helps with the consistency of the project. Considering these being one of my favorite flies, I wind up tying a lot of them for other people. So, you know, if I'm doing runs of dozens at a time, I don't want them all over the place as far as the way they look and the feel and flow of it all. So 6 of those things. Sometimes if I have a little bit of excess, I'll double the crystal over and then just have that sitting, because a lot of that body is going to cover it, and more flash never hurt anybody. But if I've only got a little piece up at front, I'll just take it down. Just want to clean that up, make sure it's all locked, rock her back to the bottom there, and there we go. There's a tail section. Next one, we're going to step in with the brush here. For the body of the brush, go with my go-tos for the ultimate style, shape, and flow. It's a squimpish hair and Icelandic sheep, which the Icelandic sheep kind of melds with the hair and creates an illusion of density, we'll say. It doesn't make it much more dense, but because of the fine nature of the sheep's hair itself, it will fill in a lot of those gaps that you'll get when you're using other materials. So you can have a less dense amount of material, but it will give you the illusion of it not being as sparse as, say, if you were doing it with something stiffer, or standalone squimpish hair, if you're doing bucktail stuff, where sparseness is key for shape and action. However, sometimes you want that profile filled all the way through so you don't see through it. That is what I'm going for with these in particular. So I'm going to take this, wrap it back all the way almost to that original tie-in point, just so we have a good locking base for this brush. And there's a couple of little techniques that I like to run through here, and I'll show you a quick measurement once I get up and find my thingamajig, the ruler majig. All right, which side is the inches here? So between the hook eye and the tie-in point, we've got about 5/8 of an inch. I want to leave between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch up front to be able to do the head material, which is going to be a craft fur brush. And I'm going to start the body section of this brush build with a more open spiral wrap. So when you're making the wraps with your body material, any brush material in general, the more concentrically tight you make them moving forward, the thicker the material and the higher up the profile is going to lift as far as the angle off of the shank. Now, to give it that kind of an edge where it's not an edge, rather an increase in your angle as you move forward, open up the spiral wraps as you're moving forward, and then by the time you're getting close to your tie-in point in the front, you want to make them a little bit tighter and closer together. That's going to lock it in place a little bit better too, as far as having anything slipping from you during that front end of the build. So I'm just going to go back over this, make sure that everything is super secure, and bring it right to where I think I'm going to put that next tie-in point. Throw a quick hitch in there. Hang her up, start getting to go. Now at this point, when you're working with longer fibers, take your time with this part. Obviously I can make this look simpler and we can speed it up or do whatever, but I want to show you that handling your material is going to keep you out of trouble. the less material that you have captured in any of these wraps, the better off you're going to be. I'm not sure if the camera is actually going to pick up how I'm spacing this out, but the wraps so far are not touching each other. There's a little bit of a gap in between the wires, so that when I first off, it keeps everything a little bit more separate, which is nice. You're going to have less tangling of your material when you're wrapping this thing forward. And again, it's going to give you that gradual elevation of your material lift in the profile from the back forward, as if you were doing, you know, some sort of hollow tie with bucktails, or any kinds of materials rather, where you're going to start in the back end with certain angles and then work your way forward and steepen the angles to give that roundness to the shoulders of a baitfish profile. So again, every few wraps, I'm going to come through here, just make sure everything is loosened up. We don't want anything trapped in there as we move forward, because it'll make our lives that much easier. And then free up a little bit of that material, make sure that it's all managed and going in the directions you want it to go moving forward. I'm coming close to that tie-in point. Let's see how we're looking with one more wrap on this. Now these materials have been kind of a go-to for me. You know, the squimpish hair being more of like a stiffer craft fur with good length, almost like a smoother big fly fiber, but I like the taper that comes naturally to it. I like the flowiness of the material. So it really works if you're looking for something that's got a little bit of softness to it instead of using a stiffer material. And then the contrast being the Icelandic sheep's hair, where, like I was saying before, will give you the illusion of volume with a softer material. So it'll add to the flowiness of it. It'll give you a little bit more illusion of bulk, and it will act as a binder with certain types of materials and kind of hold it together. So when you trim it down and it's got that sheep in it, it'll hold the profile with softer materials a lot better than you think it would. So now we're all locked off. I'm going to cut this thing nice and short. And sorry, I wasn't even counting the wraps. I'm sure we can go back in the tape, but you know, you can check that. I don't want to give a number and have my math be that horribly inaccurate in front of everybody. So now you see, we've already developed the profile. I'm going to take the tag end of this wire, just pull it straight back, and then take your handy dandy pliers, press that thing down, because we're going to roll right over it. Make sure all of your fibers are preened back from the eye backward. And then clean that up and lock down that final tie-in. Make sure, oops, how did that thing get in there? We'll get that fiber out. All right, so now, at this point, what I'll do is basically split it in half, the top side and the bottom side of this fly. Put my scissors through here, grab the top half of this, and we'll give a gradual taper cutting through from about the 2-inch mark. Same thing with the bottom side. Take about the bottom half's worth of material, not that feather. And from about the 2-inch mark, nice gradual taper. Brush that out, make sure she's kind of where you want her to be. and I think that looks pretty good so far. It's got a nice taper top and bottom. The only thing that I would do at the tail end of this whole project is probably give the belly a little bit steeper of a scoop. Keeps longer material on the bottom for fouling potentially against the bottom side of the hook, and gives a little bit of an interesting profile to the underside. I just like it with a little bit of a belly if it's gonna have a longer flowing tail. Personal preference, do what you like. And now that we've got that set, I'm gonna walk this thread back up to our first layer of threads after that last brush, and go with our electric lettuce craft head brush. Let's pull out some fibers that are really close to the wire. I like to give myself a little bit of bite, so you've got some wire to tie onto without tying onto too much material. It just adds up and bulks up very quickly. Any fibers that come loose, we'll take and preen backwards so that you can just go over it and keep that head looking nice and clean. So I'm gonna roll all the way down to the eye, come all the way back up to the original tie-in, go all the way back down, and at that point you should have her pretty well locked in place. These craft brushes I usually make pretty thick as far as the density of the material involved. So this might even, when the material is thicker, same concept as the body wrap when you're starting it off. You want to have the spiral wraps moving forward a little bit more open, so you're not creating a density that's going to become unmanageable eventually. If you have a lot of material in your brush and your density is showing, you know, it's all squishy, you have a lot of fibers that are sticking out in every direction. When you open that up, it's going to give everything a little bit more room to lay down, as opposed to keeping your wraps more concentric, which are really just going to have everything all wiry and out of control and forcing themselves more upward. So these, I know, because I built them, are a little bit on the thicker side, so I want to keep these nice and open. That amount of space, probably just under, maybe about 1/4 inch or less. Wrap number one, walk her forward a little bit. Wrap number two, keep preening back and keep everything clean. And if you don't know if it's going to be clean enough, just grab yourself a brush, because it takes less time than picking it all out and having to do it all over again. Is that the second one? That was the third one, wasn't it? And always keep track of the number of wraps you do. Wah, wah. So, come through here, pick out where my tie down is going to be. Make sure that's nice and snug as far as the wrapping of it. I like to throw 5 or 6 wraps in the back, 5 or 6 wraps in the front. Before I even think about cutting things off, you want to make sure it's all nice and locked down and tight. Bam. And the same thing with the brush before. The body section of the brush, you're going to take whatever wire is exposed, pull it straight backward, and I like to just squish that down a little bit because we're going to be rolling right over it to create and control the head. So now you can see that fibers are kind of moving in every direction. You got some stuff trapped, and that's okay. Before you start creating that head, you're going to come through with a quick brush. Make sure everything's loose, everything's going in the direction that you want it to go, because once you start building the head, you're going to be working those fibers back up and locking them in position in around the shank of the hook. So once you start moving back and coning that head up, you're not going to be able to shift any of those fibers. I like to preen it all back as a whole like that. catch over all that stuff, and I see a little bit of fray up here, which with synthetic materials, this is always a good thing. Have a lighter handy, boom, bang. No more, nice and clean. Piece o' cake. And then just to be sure, I'm gonna come through and just shape this. If you start seeing the bumps of any of that wire work in there, and you really want to give yourself a nice, clean, cone-shaped head, feel free. Once you lock it in place, you can just grab those pliers and cinch them down however you want. So that's a pretty solid head on there. I'll walk it back up to the front. And ready for a whip finish. However, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm all tangled up because I stopped myself. I saw a couple of these fibers getting in there in the whip finish wraps, and I don't want that. So just get those fibers out of the way. It's nothing worse than trapped fibers on a finished head, I'll tell you what. Boom. Make sure all that stuff's out of the way. Throw a little bit of UV resin up on there. Make sure it's all nice and pretty. Clean. And then, I don't know, force of habit, I just like to keep it rolling. If I use a lot of resin just to help level it off, it helps with the smoothness in your finish. And then a nice hard cook on there, nice and crispy. Now, I mean, these basic principles of these brush builds I've covered in our previous videos. And again, in one of our other videos, I believe it was the purple baitfish build, where we went through with the trimming style of it. So like I was saying, with that bottom side, I'll separate this material so you get the bottom half of that, and you can see where some of the density in the shorter material on the inside of the brush is kind of, see that thing there? So we basically wanted to take it and shave it at almost a consistent angle. I don't know if this is gonna show very well, but again, so we're just, you know, shaving at an angle all the way up, and it might take you a couple of times to get what you like. So you get a nice gradual shave to it first. See what that shape looks like. And honestly, that looks pretty good for what I'm looking at now, excuse me. Any shorter fibers that are sticking out from the brushwork on the front side of the head, you could see some of that stuff is when I would come in from the backside towards the front of the head to create that taper in that direction, which will take any of those hard edges right out of it. So just turn it around 360, look and see what we can clean up if we have to do anything. This is also a perfect time if you need to reshape the head, if you want it to look a specific way and want to put a little extra flair to it. You know, I mean, you could sit there and you could trim all day as far as I'm concerned. That's one of the most time-consuming parts of all of this, and actually it's kind of fun too, but you know, hopefully we make it so you don't have to do it too much. But I just want to take any of those hard defined edges out of that head material for that brush. And I feel like we got it pretty clean. It'll also blend back in really well, but sometimes you got to be a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to this stuff. This is what the preparation's all about, knowing the materials that you're working with and working with them as efficiently and effectively as you can. So now that I've got that all trimmed down, that's what we're looking at. Flatwing style brush fly. And we make fleets of these things and catch whatever the heck you want. These are all pretty simple builds. It's just a matter of dialing in the techniques to get the materials to lay the way that you want them to. You know, the brushes have really been helping me out, and it's kind of a go-to style for me because I could do a lot of prep ahead of hand and you know, be able to run through larger batches when I have the time and do, you know, fairly quickly. So look into that stuff. I mean, the other advantage of doing brush work is that once you get your eye for the densities of the builds themselves, you're going to have as close to a perfect 360-degree profile as you can, as far as the consistency of density and volumes around that hook shank in your 360 section of the profile. So another thing to think of, so you're not squirreling around doing hollow ties and all this stuff and then watching uneven amounts of material on each side, it is really helpful to get that perfect 360 shape to it. Piece of cake. Easy, simple, dual brush flatwing style fly. Squimpish materials. That's squimpish hair, ice sheet blend for the body part, craft fur, duotone with the electric lettuce. That's an electric blue and a chartreuse mix with some flatwing saddles in both the chartreuse and white, a little bit of flash. Little bucktail as a prop material for the tail to keep everything a little bit manageable, keep it from getting unruly on you. And that's about it. It's pretty simple stuff once you get the techniques down for it. And hopefully I can impart with you a little bit of technique to adding to your own techniques. And obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. Check out the other videos, check out the channel, see if there's anything you want to see. Let me know. I'm always down to clown, so I don't even know. Anything else, you know how to find me. The internet's a wild place. So check out Squimpish Flies, check out Tone's Custom Flies, my website, check out any of my pages. If you have any questions, feel free to look me up, reach out, and have fun tying. I will get back and do some more videos and we can get back to the vise soon. Keep her greasy.